morning. Yeah, I'm distressed to hear about the latest suicide bombers in Israel. For those who yearn for peace in the Middle East, for those in the Arab lands, for those in Europe, for those all around the world who yearn for peace, we must do everything we possibly can to stop the terror. There are a few killers who want to stop the peace process that we have started, and we must not let them. For the sake of humanity, for the sake of the Palestinians who suffer, for the sake of the Israelis who are under attack, we must stop the terror. I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
George Walker Bush was born on July 6, 1946, at Grace New Haven Hospital in New Haven, Connecticut. He was the first child of George Herbert Walker Bush and Barbara Pierce. He was raised in Midland and Houston, Texas, with 4 siblings, Jeb, Neil, Marvin, and Dorothy. Another younger sister, Robin, died from leukemia at the age of 3 in 1953. His paternal grandfather, Prescott Bush, was a U.S. Senator from Connecticut. His father was Ronald Reagan's vice president from 1981 to 1989 and the 41st U.S. president from 1989 to 1993. Bush has English and German ancestry, along with more distant Dutch, Welsh, Irish, French, and Scottish roots. Bush attended public schools in Midland, Texas until the family moved to Houston after he had completed 7th grade. He then spent 2 years at the Kincaid School, a college preparatory school. Bush attended high school at Phillips Academy, a boarding school in Andover, Massachusetts, where he played baseball and was the head cheerleader during his senior year. He attended Yale University from 1964 to 1968, graduating with a Bachelor of Arts degree in history. During this time, he was a cheerleader and a member of the Delta Kappa Epsilon, serving as the president of the fraternity during his senior year. Bush became a member of the Skull and Bones Society as a senior. Bush was a rugby union player and was on Yale's first 15. He characterized himself as an average student. His grade point average during his first 3 years at Yale was 77, and he had a similar average under a non-numerical rating system in his final year. In the fall of 1973, Bush entered Harvard Business School. He graduated in 1975 with an MBA degree.
For immediate modernization and augmentation of its primary strike aircraft, TAC has selected this McDonnell F-110A as having the best capability of in-production aircraft for the complete tactical air mission.
47th Reconnaissance Wing out of the Ellington Field Joint Reserve Base. Critics, including former Democratic National Committee Chairman Terry McAuliffe, have alleged that Bush was favorably treated due to his father's political standing as a member of the House of Representatives, citing his selection as a pilot despite his low pilot aptitude test scores and his irregular attendance. In June 2005, the Department of Defense released all the records of Bush's Texas Air National Guard service, which remain in its official archives. In late 1972 and early 1973, he drilled with the 187th Fighter Wing of the Alabama Air National Guard. He had moved to Montgomery, Alabama, to work on the unsuccessful U.S. Senate campaign of Republican Winton M. Blunt. In 1972, Bush was suspended from flying for failure to take a scheduled physical exam. He was honorably discharged from the Air Force Reserve on November 21, 1974. In 1977, Bush established Arbusto Energy, a small oil exploration company, although it did not begin operations until the following year. He later changed the name to Bush Exploration. In 1984, his company merged with the larger Spectrum 7, and Bush became chairman. The company was hurt by decreased oil prices, and it folded into Harken Energy Corporation, with Bush becoming a member of Harken's board of directors. Questions of possible insider trading involving Harken arose, but a Securities and Exchange Commission investigation concluded that the information Bush had at the time of his stock sale was not sufficient to constitute insider trading. In April 1989, Bush arranged for a group of investors to purchase a controlling interest in the Texas Rangers baseball franchise for $89 million and invested $500,000 himself to start. He then was managing general partner for 5 years. He actively led the team's projects and regularly attended its games, often choosing to sit in the open stands with fans. Bush's sale of his shares in the Rangers in 1998 brought him over $15 million from his initial $800,000 investment. Prior to his eventual gubernatorial campaign, Bush briefly considered a candidacy to become the commissioner of baseball in the early to mid-1990s. In the 1978 elections, Bush ran for the House of Representatives from Texas's 19th congressional district. The retiring member, George H. Mahone, had held the district for the Democratic Party since 1935. Bush's opponent, Kent Hance, portrayed him as out of touch with rural Texans, and Bush lost the election with 46.8% of the vote to Hance's 53.2%. Bush and his family moved to Washington, D.C., in 1988 to work on his father's campaign for the U.S. presidency. He was a campaign advisor and liaison to the media, and assisted his father by campaigning across the country. In December 1991, Bush was one of 7 people named by his father to run his father's 1992 presidential re-election campaign as a campaign advisor. The previous month, his father had asked him to tell White House Chief of Staff John H. Sununu to resign.
Richards promised a pay raise for teachers. She didn't deliver. Then most of us thought the lottery money was dedicated to our schools, but it wasn't. The state share of school funding was cut, and with Robin Hood, property taxes skyrocketed.
As governor, I will shift more of the state's budget to education and free our teachers and parents to design our schools so that they meet local needs. The children of Texas deserve the best. My goal is excellence in our classrooms.
Bush for governor.
George has always been really very engaged as a father. They know they can always count on him.
George W. Bush takes his responsibilities as a parent very seriously and has a strong message for those who don't.
If any parent does not pay court-ordered child support, the state of Texas should suspend any license we issue. Driver's license, legal license, doctor's license, and to show you how serious I am, hunting licenses. Because each and every Texan must be held accountable for their behavior.
Take a stand for Texas values. Bush for governor.
A 19-gun salute and a flyover by F-16s signal the start of the inaugural ceremony and the start of a new era in Texas politics.
And laws of the United States.
And of this state.
And of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
The era of George Walker Bush, husband, father, and son of a former president and first lady. They drink it all in, while an artist in the crowd captures the moment for posterity.
I'm doing it for President Bush.
Governor Bush, meanwhile, speaks of a new Texas.
The new freedom Texas seeks must be matched with renewed personal responsibility. The very future of our society depends on it.
He goes on to outline his priorities: education, welfare, and tort reform.
There are many ways for a business to fail. We must not allow one of them to be a frivolous lawsuit, so that every small business person in Texas has a better chance to succeed.
This tort reform, I think that's going to be good for the country if they can stop some of these frivolous lawsuits.
He has the right idea. We have to take responsibility for our own action. No government, no office is going to solve the problems for us until we take personal responsibility for ourselves and for our neighbors.
Didn't come on bashing. He really praised the last administration.
We have a chance to save a generation.
Democratic Lieutenant Governor Bob Bullock was part of that previous administration. Today, he reached out to his new Republican governor as they prepare to tackle the problems that lie ahead.
Goals can be accomplished by a leadership, by a legislature that works without personal or political rhetoric and that works in a bipartisan effort, Governor Bush, with no agenda but a Texas agenda of what's best for Texas.
Bush used a budget surplus to push through Texas's largest tax cut, $2 billion. He extended government funding for organizations providing education on the dangers of alcohol and drug use and abuse, and helping to reduce domestic violence. Critics contended that during his tenure, Texas ranked near the bottom in environmental evaluations. Supporters pointed to his efforts to raise the salaries of teachers and improve educational test scores. In 1999, Bush signed a law that required electric retailers to buy a certain amount of energy from renewable sources, RPS, which helped Texas eventually become the leading producer of wind-powered electricity in the U.S. In 1998, Bush won re-election with a record 69% of the vote. He became the first governor in Texas history to be elected to 2 consecutive 4-year terms. In his second term, Bush promoted faith-based organizations and enjoyed high approval ratings, which peaked at 81% in 1999. He proclaimed June 10, 2000, to be Jesus Day in Texas, a day on which he urged all Texans to answer the call to serve those in need. Throughout Bush's first term, he was the focus of national attention as a potential future presidential candidate. Following his re-election, speculation soared, and within a year he decided to seek the 2000 Republican presidential nomination.
United States.